She was an alien goddess, but his first wish broke her divine heart. The stars were silent that night, a sea of cold light stretching forever around the dying moon. Ethan Ward's ship drifted through the wreckage, its hull torn apart by invisible fire, its engines dead, and its alarms long gone quiet. He woke to the sharp taste of smoke in his mouth, his body aching, his suit half melted from the crash. For a moment, he thought he was dead, but then he saw it, the sky burning green above him, a light pulsing like a heartbeat, whispering through the dust. Ethan stumbled through the ruins, past twisted metal and black sand that shimmered like glass. Each step echoed with strange whispers, soft voices calling his name though no one was there. His oxygen meter blinked red, warning him that death was close. Yet something pulled him forward, a feeling, a promise, like someone waiting for him just beyond the next hill. At the center of the crater stood an ancient temple of glowing stone. Its walls moved like liquid, patterns of stars shifting across its surface. And in the heart of that light stood a figure tall, graceful, made of pure silver radiance. Her eyes shone brighter than any sun. Her hair flowed like cosmic dust caught in a gentle wind. Ethan froze, unable to breathe, unable to think. Then she spoke, her voice echoing through the void, calm and sorrowful. "You have entered the shrine of desires, mortal," she said. "You are the first of your kind to reach this place alive." Her tone was neither angry nor kind. It was something deeper, something divine. Ethan fell to his knees, unsure if he should speak. He had seen gods in stories, but never one that looked so human, so alive, so lonely. "Who are you?" he asked weakly. The figure tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "I am Lysera," she said, "the last of the celestial keepers, the one who grants the wishes of those who find this shrine." Ethan blinked in disbelief. "Wishes?" "Yes," she said softly. "3 wishes, each bound by the truth of your soul." He laughed, a broken, exhausted sound. "Then I wish I was home." But she didn't smile. She only stared at him with eyes that saw through time itself. "That wish cannot be granted," she whispered. "The shrine answers only what lies deepest in your heart." Ethan lowered his head, his mind clouded with loss. His crew was gone, his planet far away, his life shattered like glass. He wanted power. He wanted revenge. But beneath all that, something else stirred. Something small yet infinite. Lysera stepped closer, her presence filling the air with warmth and calm. "Speak your true wish, human," she said gently, "and let the stars listen." Her beauty was beyond reason, her light soft like moonlight over water. Ethan raised his head and looked into her glowing eyes. For the first time, he didn't see a goddess. He saw someone trapped. He noticed the faint shimmer of golden chains around her wrists, energy bindings. Glowing and pulsing with runes, he realized she wasn't free. She was bound to this place, forced to serve for eternity. A strange silence filled the temple. Lysera waited, her gaze both curious and sad. Ethan took a slow breath, his voice trembling as he spoke. "My first wish," he said, "is that you be free." The temple fell silent. For a moment, not even the stars dared to move. Lysera's expression shattered. Confusion, shock, disbelief all flashing across her face. "No one has ever wished that," she whispered, her voice breaking like glass in the wind. Light erupted around her as the chains cracked, bursting into fragments of gold that melted into air. Her wings of energy spread wide, filling the shrine with light so pure it blinded him. The ground trembled, the air screamed, and reality itself bent like liquid. Ethan covered his face, struggling to stay standing as power roared around him. Lysera cried out, her voice echoing through every corner of existence. "What have you done, human? You've broken the law of creation. He opened his eyes, barely able to see her through the storm of light. Her form was changing, her radiance becoming flesh. Her eyes now shimmering with emotion. She looked terrified, yet alive. The temple cracked open above them, stars spinning wildly in the sky. Ethan stumbled forward, reaching out his hand. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You're free now." Lysera stared at him, trembling, her voice shaking. "You don't understand. The universe will come for you." And before he could answer, the temple exploded in light, swallowing them both into the unknown. Before the story continues, if you're enjoying this journey into HFY Sci-Fi, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It really helps us keep bringing you more stories like this. The world was falling apart around him, a storm of golden fire swallowing the moon's black sky. Ethan felt himself drifting, his body light as dust, the ground vanishing beneath his boots. When the blinding glow faded, he found himself standing on a floating island of crystal, suspended in endless space. The ruins of the temple drifted above and below like shattered stars. And beside him knelt Lysera, the freed goddess. Her radiance dimmed to a soft silver glow. Her chains were gone, but her hands still trembled, as if she could still feel their weight. She looked at him, her eyes glowing with confusion and fear. "You broke the divine binding," she whispered. "Do you even understand what you've done?" Ethan shook his head slowly. "I only did what felt right," he said, his voice steady but soft. Lysera's lips parted, her tone fragile. "No mortal has ever wished for me to be free. They all wanted power, wealth, eternal life, or revenge. But you asked for my freedom." A long silence stretched between them, filled with the faint hum of cosmic energy. Her light flickered as if the universe itself was rejecting her existence. Stars shifted overhead, rearranging themselves into new constellations. Ethan could feel time itself bending, like the laws of creation were being rewritten. He looked around and realized this wasn't just space. It was something deeper, the fabric between realities. Lysera's aura began to twist violently, colors burning across her form. Her voice broke as she said, "They will come for me. For you. The celestial keepers never allow one of their kind to walk free." She rose to her feet, light trailing behind her like mist, and the void trembled in response. Ethan could barely stay upright as gravity changed directions every few seconds. "You should have wished for something safe," she said, her voice shaking with both anger and sorrow. "Now every god in this universe will hunt us." Ethan smiled faintly despite the chaos. "Then we'll run," he said. "You're free now. And I'm not letting anyone take that from you." Lysera blinked, staring at him as if she'd never heard such words before, for the first time since her creation. Someone wasn't kneeling, wasn't begging, wasn't worshiping. Someone was standing beside her, not below her. Something inside her shifted. A spark she didn't recognize, emotion, real and human. She raised her hand and tore open the air, creating a portal of spinning light. "Follow me," she said urgently. "Before the gatekeepers sense us," Ethan didn't hesitate. He stepped through, and suddenly they were falling through a tunnel of galaxies. Colors flashed past them, memories of dying stars and forgotten worlds. He saw visions of civilizations worshipping Lysera, building shrines in her name, never realizing she was their prisoner. Her voice echoed faintly through the stream of light. "I was made to serve wishes, not live dreams of my own." They landed hard on the surface of a barren planet, red sand stretching endlessly to the horizon. Ethan coughed and looked up. 2 suns burned in the sky, and a massive city floated above them in the clouds. Lysera collapsed beside him, her energy nearly gone. Her once glowing form now pale and faint. He hurried to her side. "Hey, stay with me," he said, gripping her hand. Surprised to feel it warm like human skin, she looked up at him weakly. "You shouldn't care for a being like me," she whispered. "I'm not meant to exist this way," Ethan smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time someone rewrote what's meant to be." For a moment she just stared, her gaze deep and uncertain, her heartbeat pulsing like a star behind her chest. Then she shivered. A ripple of dark light passed through the air, and she gasped. "They've found us," she said, her voice trembling. "The guardians of order. They're coming." Ethan turned toward the sky and saw it, streaks of black light falling like spears from the heavens. The ground shook violently as one of them struck nearby, carving a crater of molten glass. Lysera tried to stand but stumbled, her power too unstable. Ethan grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a broken ridge as the next blast hit. A deep, mechanical voice echoed through the dust. "Unbound entity detected. Termination required." Metallic figures descended from the clouds. Armored beings of pure energy, the Celestial Hunters. Each carried a staff that glowed with symbols older than galaxies. Lysera's hands glowed faintly as she tried to summon her power. But the air resisted her. Her voice shook. "I'm too weak." Freeing me broke my connection to the cosmic stream. Ethan glanced around, searching for anything that could help, then spotted a fallen hunter. Its weapon sparking in the sand. He picked it up, the weapon thrumming in his grip, its energy almost burning through his gloves. Lysera stared at him in disbelief. "That staff is forged for divine hands," she said. "It will destroy you." He tightened his hold, his voice firm. "Guess I'll have to pretend to be divine for a minute." As the hunters closed in, Ethan swung the staff, releasing a pulse of blue energy that tore through the air. The blast hit one of the hunters, shattering it into shards of metal and light. Lysera gasped, astonished. "How did you?" "I don't know," he said quickly. "But it worked," she smiled faintly. "Even through the chaos. Humans," she whispered. "Always impossible." The ground cracked again as a shadow covered the sun. A massive shape descended through the clouds, a colossal being made of pure starlight. Lysera's face went pale. "No," she whispered. "That's the Keeper of Fate himself." The air froze, time slowed, even the dust hung motionless. Ethan could feel the weight of infinite eyes turning toward him. The Keeper's voice rolled through the sky like thunder. "Mortal who broke the bond," it said. "You have disturbed the balance of existence." Lysera tried to stand between them, but the Keeper's gaze pinned her in place. "Return to your prison, daughter of the stars," the voice commanded. "And let this human be erased." Ethan stepped forward, gripping the glowing staff tighter, his heart hammering. "If you want her," he said, his tone steady, "you'll have to go through me." The Keeper's eyes flared with cosmic fire, the world shaking as its shadow spread across the horizon. Lysera's heart pounded. No mortal had ever defied a god before. She whispered through the storm, her voice filled with awe and fear. "You've done the impossible once already, Ethan Ward," she said softly. "Let's see if humanity can do it again." And as the sky split open in roaring light, the battle for fate itself began. The world burned with celestial fire, the Keeper's presence bending the very shape of reality. Ethan stood with the glowing staff in his hands, his breath ragged, his courage the only thing keeping him upright. Lysera, weakened yet defiant, stood beside him, her silver aura trembling like a dying flame. Above them, the Keeper of Fate raised a colossal hand, each finger a pillar of starlight, ready to erase them from existence. Ethan's instincts screamed to run, but Lysera reached out, her hand brushing his arm. "I can open a way," she whispered, "but it will tear the fabric between worlds." He nodded without hesitation. "Do it," he said, his voice steady, though the air shook like thunder. Lysera closed her eyes and whispered ancient words that made the sky bleed light. A tear ripped open in the air, a swirling portal of galaxies and shadows. Before the keeper could strike, Lysera grabbed Ethan's hand, and together they leapt through. The universe screamed as they vanished. For a moment, there was nothing but color and sound, endless stars rushing past. Time folding in on itself, Ethan felt weightless, falling through centuries, seeing flashes of lives and worlds he didn't know. Lysera's voice echoed beside him, faint and broken. "Hold on, human. Don't let go." They crashed into another world, a place of blue sand and green lightning. The air was electric, the sky filled with twin moons spinning slowly like eyes. Ethan coughed, his lungs burning, his armor cracked, but he was alive. Lysera knelt beside him, her form dim, her body almost translucent. "I can't keep running like this," she said softly. "Every jump drains what's left of my essence." He helped her up, his hand steady beneath hers. "Then we find somewhere to rest," he said, "and fight smart next time." They walked across the strange desert until they found the remains of a ruined city. Ancient towers leaned against the horizon, their walls glowing faintly with alien script. Lysera touched one of the broken stones and whispered, "This was one of our worlds, long before humans learned to walk." Ethan could hear sadness in her voice, centuries of servitude buried beneath the calm. He asked quietly, "Did you ever want to rule again?" She shook her head. "No, I only wanted to live without chains." As they spoke, a distant hum filled the air, a sound like glass grinding on metal. Lysera's eyes widened. "The Guardians have found us." Ethan turned, spotting dozens of dark shapes emerging from the dunes, their bodies gleaming like obsidian mirrors. Each carried a spear of light and moved with mechanical precision. Lysera raised her trembling hand, forming a weak barrier of shimmering energy. But the Guardians fired at once, their beams slicing through the barrier like fire through paper. Ethan grabbed her arm and pulled her into the ruins. Diving behind a collapsed column, explosions rocked the ground, spraying dust and glowing shards through the air. Ethan peeked out, counting the enemies. Too many, far too many. Lysera pressed her hand to the sand, her voice weak. "There's a hidden portal beneath the city, a last resort escape built by my kind." He nodded. "Show me." They ran through the wreckage as beams tore through walls around them. Lysera stumbled once, her body flickering, and Ethan caught her before she fell. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Why do you keep risking yourself for me?" He smiled faintly. "Because you're worth saving." Her eyes softened, glowing faintly with warmth instead of power. Then she turned her hand and drew a circle of light on the ground, a gateway spiraling open beneath their feet. Before they could step in, a spear of energy slammed into the ground beside them. The shockwave threw Ethan backward, the weapon flying from his hand. From the smoke emerged a tall figure in black armor, a Guardian commander, its voice a low mechanical growl. "Mortal detected, anomaly confirmed, execution authorized." Ethan reached for his weapon, but the commander was faster, striking with inhuman force. The blow sent Ethan crashing into a wall, pain tearing through his chest. Lysera screamed his name, unleashing a blast of silver light that hurled the Guardian backward. The commander rose again, its armor cracked, but its eyes blazing. Ethan forced himself to stand, blood dripping down his lip. "I'm not done yet," he said. He lunged forward, grabbing the fallen spear, and drove it through the Guardian's core. The explosion tore through the ruins, blinding and loud. When the dust settled, the commander was gone, and Ethan collapsed to his knees, exhausted. Lysera rushed to him, placing her hands over his wounds, her palms glowing softly. "You're reckless," she said, her voice trembling. "Even gods fear the Guardians." Ethan looked up at her, his smile weak. Then maybe gods should start taking notes from humans. Her laughter was quiet but real, the first sound of true joy she had ever made. She helped him up, and together they stepped into the glowing portal, disappearing as the city crumbled behind them. They emerged in deep space, a floating platform surrounded by broken moons and drifting asteroids. Ethan gasped, staring at the view. "Where are we?" Lysera turned slowly, her expression uneasy. "The edge of the known universe," she whispered. "The place where even light refuses to go." But before she could say more, the air rippled again, a vast shadow forming from starlight and smoke. The Keeper of Fate had returned, its voice filling every corner of existence. "You cannot run from destiny," it thundered. "You have defied the eternal law." Ethan stood beside Lysera, gripping the staff tighter. His voice was calm, steady, fearless. "Then we'll rewrite it." The Keeper's form began to change, its face shifting through 1,000 gods and 1,000 worlds. Lysera looked at Ethan, her heart caught between terror and awe. For the first time, she realized she was no longer guiding him. She was following him. The human she had met by accident now stood against eternity itself, and in that moment, even the stars seemed to hold their breath. The Keeper extended its hand, summoning a storm of cosmic fire. Ethan and Lysera braced together as the void screamed around them. Lysera whispered softly, "If we survive this, I'll tell you the truth about who created me." Ethan glanced at her, his voice steady. "If we survive this, you'll tell me everything." The firestorm descended like a falling sun, and their bodies vanished into the roaring light. The chase across the stars had ended, but the war for the universe had only just begun. The explosion of light tore through eternity, scattering fragments of stars like sparks in the dark. When the glare faded, Ethan found himself standing on a vast plain of glass beneath a swirling violet sky. There was no sound, no wind, only the echo of his own heartbeat. Beside him, Lysera floated above the surface, her glow faint and trembling, her expression distant. The Keeper's voice rolled across the horizon, deep as thunder. "You cannot hide in the void forever. Mortal," it said, "your wish has broken the chain that holds creation together." Its colossal form began to materialize again, a being of endless faces and eyes, each one staring through him. Ethan felt his knees weaken, the weight of a universe pressing against his chest. Lysera stepped forward, her silver aura spreading in soft ripples. "Keeper of Fate," she said, "you have no right to harm him." It was my power that answered his wish. The Keeper's laughter shook the sky. "You forget, fallen goddess. It is not power I punish, it is intent." Lightning of pure starlight cracked across the horizon, splitting the glassy ground into rivers of molten light. Ethan clenched his fists, his voice hoarse. "You call this justice?" She was a slave to your laws. The Keeper lowered its gaze, one massive eye burning brighter than a sun. "Mortals cannot comprehend justice," it replied. "You act from emotion, not balance." Ethan took a step forward, despite the heat crawling beneath his boots. "Maybe emotion is what your universe has been missing," he said, his tone steady, "because without it, creation means nothing." Lysera looked at him in silent shock. No one had ever spoken to the Keeper that way. The being's many faces flickered with anger and curiosity. "Very well," it said. "Let us see what your fragile heart truly values." The world around them began to twist, the sky folding inward, the stars spinning into mirrors. In each reflection, Ethan saw pieces of his past, his lost crew, the smoldering wreckage of his ship, the faces of those who had died following him. The Keeper's voice thundered. "Would you trade her freedom for their lives?" The images shifted, showing the people he loved, laughing, alive again. Ethan's throat tightened, his heart aching like a wound reopened. He reached forward instinctively, but Lysera's hand caught his, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't," she whispered. "It's an illusion. It's testing you." Tears stung his eyes, the vision so real he could almost hear their voices. "I can bring them back," the Keeper said. "One word from you, and her chains will return. The balance restored, your pain erased, Ethan trembled. Caught between longing and duty, he closed his eyes, hearing his own voice echo in the emptiness. I won't undo what's right. The illusions shattered like glass. The light folding back into darkness, the keeper paused, its vast form still. Even the winds of the void seemed to hold their breath. You refuse salvation, it said quietly. For a being who once enslaved others in my name. Ethan met its gaze. Then maybe she deserves a chance to change that. Lysera stared at him, her silver eyes shining with tears that glimmered like tiny stars. For countless eons she had been bound to grant the desires of mortals. But no one had ever granted hers. She felt something new stirring within her, not power, but purpose. The keeper raised its arm, the air bending with a force that made the universe groan. Your defiance rewrites fate, it said. If you wish to keep her freedom, then prove your worth before judgment. A circle of fire erupted beneath Ethan's feet, forming a colossal ring of energy. The keeper's form multiplied around them, 1,000 versions of itself forming an arena of gods. Each eye blazing with light as the ground began to shake. Lysera gasped. This is the trial of truth. No mortal has ever survived it. Ethan grinned weakly. First time for everything. The trial began. From the void emerged creatures of memory, shadow figures shaped from his deepest fears. The first lunged at him, a copy of himself wrapped in darkness, its voice snarling. You'll die for a goddess who will forget you. Ethan swung the celestial staff, the blow cutting through the shadow with a burst of light. But another came, and another, each whispering doubt, regret, temptation. Lysera tried to help, but the keeper held her back with invisible chains, forcing her to watch. Every being must face its own heart, it said. And yours beats louder than most. Ethan's movements slowed as exhaustion set in, his breath sharp, his vision blurring. Then one final shadow appeared. This one took Lysera's form. Glowing faintly, it stepped forward, smiling sadly. You freed me, it whispered, but I never asked you to die for me. Ethan hesitated, his grip faltering. A false Lysera reached out, touching his cheek. Just say you regret it, and this pain will end. He closed his eyes, feeling warmth against his skin, and whispered, No, I don't regret it. He drove the staff forward, the light exploding so bright it erased every shadow in the field. When the glow faded, Ethan stood alone in the circle. The ground cracked, his body barely holding. The keeper loomed above, its countless faces silent. Lysera broke free of her invisible bindings, running toward him, catching him as he fell. He looked up at her and managed a weak smile. Guess I passed. The keeper's tone softened for the first time. You have, it said. Your will has been measured, and your soul found true. The sky began to close, the endless eyes fading one by one. Before the keeper vanished, its voice echoed one last time. 2 wishes remain, human, it said. Choose them wisely. For the universe listens now. The ground split open beneath them, and before Lysera could speak, they were pulled through a beam of light. Falling back into the mortal galaxy, Ethan gasped as they landed on a quiet world of silver seas and pale skies. Lysera knelt beside him, her trembling hand brushing his face. You faced the gods and won, she whispered, her voice breaking. You've changed what cannot be changed. He looked at her with tired eyes. Then maybe it's time for my second wish. Lysera froze, her heart beating faster than it ever had. What will you ask for now? She asked softly. He looked out at the horizon, the light reflecting in his eyes, and with quiet certainty he said, Something the universe has forgotten. Freedom for everyone. Her breath caught. Her pulse thundered. The words alone made the air vibrate. And she realized the next wish might destroy everything they had left. The stars flickered, The sea began to rise. And in that trembling silence, she whispered, "Ethan Ward, you're about to unmake creation itself." The sky over the silver sea darkened, as if the universe itself had drawn a breath. Ethan stood on the quiet shore, the waves glowing faintly under twin moons. Beside him Lysera watched, her hands trembling with light that flickered between fear and awe. She could feel the weight of his words hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. "You said freedom for everyone," she whispered. "Do you know what that means?" Ethan nodded slowly. "It means no more chains, not for you. Not for anyone." Her gaze darted toward the horizon, where constellations shifted restlessly. Every being bound by divine law, every soul trapped in servitude, they will all awaken, she said softly. The gods will call it rebellion. Ethan looked at her, calm but certain. Then let them. She hesitated, torn between terror and admiration. He reached out, touching her shoulder gently. "You taught me that freedom is worth any cost." Her eyes shimmered with silver tears. "I never meant for you to fight the cosmos itself." He smiled faintly. "Too late." He raised his hand, the celestial staff glowing brighter than the moon's. Lysera felt the pulse of the universe stutter, every star flickering as if holding its breath. "Ethan," she said urgently, "once spoken, it cannot be undone." He met her gaze, his voice quiet but unshakable. "I wish every enslaved being across the stars would be free." The world exploded with light. A shock wave of gold and white burst outward. Racing faster than thought, it spread through galaxies, through nebulae and black holes, through the hearts of dying suns, across worlds unseen, chains shattered, metal, energy and will alike. Creatures that had never seen the sky lifted their faces to it for the first time. Insectoid miners dropped their tools and screamed in joy. Cyber slaves blinked as programs dissolved. Beasts and angels alike felt the bindings fall away. Lysera clutched her chest, gasping as the divine network that once linked her to the celestial court dissolved into dust. Her body shook, her light dimming until she could barely stand. Ethan caught her before she fell, holding her close as the sea turned gold around them. "You did it," she whispered. "You freed them all." He smiled weakly. "Not me, us." But even as he said it, the air grew heavy, the sky bleeding red. The universe had felt the wound, and the gods were stirring high above. Vast shapes moved among the stars, silhouettes of titans made of burning light. Each voice thundered through space. Balance destroyed, law broken, judgment required. Lysera lifted her head, horror in her eyes. "The celestial conclave is awakening." She staggered to her feet, energy arcing across her skin. "They will purge every world touched by your wish." Ethan looked up at the rising storm. "Then we stop them." She turned to him sharply. "You can't fight gods, Ethan. Not even with that staff." He shrugged slightly, a grim smile touching his lips. "We'll find a way." Suddenly the ground cracked beneath them, molten light spilling through fissures that led into infinity. From the rift emerged colossal figures of crystal armor and flame, the heralds of order. Their wings spread across the sky, their voices a chorus. "Return the stolen balance or perish." Ethan stepped forward, the wind tearing at his clothes. "If you want balance, come take it." The first herald lunged, its spear cutting a line of fire through the air. Ethan dodged barely in time, the blast sending him tumbling through smoke and sand. Lysera screamed his name and unleashed a wave of pure energy. Her power fueled by fury, the blast hit the herald square in the chest, shattering its armor into stardust. But the victory lasted only seconds. For 10 more descended from the clouds, their combined light burned through the atmosphere. Lysera's body wavered, the effort tearing at her essence. "There are too many," she gasped. Ethan grabbed her hand. Then we make them chase us." He slammed the staff into the ground. Opening a portal of swirling light, they leapt through just as the herald struck. Their blasts tearing the planet apart, they landed inside a derelict human space station, drifting in the void. The lights flickered weakly, air thin and cold. Ethan steadied Lysera against a wall, her form flickering between flesh and energy. "You're burning yourself out," he said. "You need to rest." She shook her head stubbornly. "If I rest now, the Conclave will find us," he frowned. "Then tell me how to fight them." Lysera looked at him, sadness in her eyes. "There is only one force equal to the gods, the source of creation itself." Ethan tilted his head. "And where do we find that?" She whispered, "Inside you." He blinked in disbelief. "Inside me?" Lysera nodded slowly. "Your wish rewrote the law of the universe. The power used had to go somewhere. It bonded to your soul." Ethan stared down at his hands. Faint trails of light pulsing beneath his skin. "So now I'm carrying a piece of creation itself," he murmured. Lysera smiled faintly despite the chaos. "Humanity was never meant to wield such power. Yet somehow you do." Suddenly alarms blared through the ruined station. Lysera's expression darkened. "They've tracked us again." Through the observation window, a storm of golden ships appeared, each shaped like a burning star. The celestial armada had arrived, filling the void with endless fire. Ethan tightened his grip on the staff, feeling the pulse of creation thrum through him. He looked at Lysera, his voice calm and resolute. "Then we finish this." She met his gaze, her fear replaced with trust. Together, outside, the gods prepared to erase them, their energy building to the power of 1,000 suns inside. One human and one freed goddess stood against infinity. Ethan raised the staff, its glow merging with the light in his veins. The universe trembled as two impossible forces faced each other. Lysera whispered, "They will destroy you if you use that power." He smiled gently. "Maybe, but if it keeps them from taking freedom away again, it's worth it." As the first divine blast struck, Ethan thrust the staff forward, the collision shaking all of existence. A wave of white light burst outward, swallowing the stars. In that single heartbeat, galaxies flickered and vanished, only to reappear reborn. And as the radiance faded, Lysera realized with horror that Ethan was no longer beside her. Only the faint echo of his heartbeat lingered in the air. Fading slowly into silence, she fell to her knees, screaming his name into the empty cosmos. Her tears became stars, her voice a whisper across time, somewhere far away. She heard his echo answer faintly, "It's not over yet." And in that moment, the freed worlds began to rise. The war for existence had begun, and humanity, through one man, had become the spark the gods could no longer control. The universe was silent for a heartbeat, the kind of silence that comes only before worlds die. Then the stars screamed, their light bending as armies of gods spilled across the heavens. Each one burned brighter than suns, carrying weapons made of time and thought. They came for one purpose, to erase the human who had torn freedom from their hands. Lysera hovered above the ruins of the human station, her body still trembling with the echo of Ethan's power. She could no longer feel him. Yet his heartbeat pulsed faintly through the void, like a whisper from somewhere beyond space. Her eyes flared with silver fire. "You freed me." "Ethan Ward," she whispered. "Now I'll free the rest." She raised her hand, summoning every liberated soul across the galaxies. Lights appeared in the dark, thousands and millions. Beings of every form and race answering her call on a desert moon. Freed miners lifted weapons made of broken tools. In frozen worlds, cyberslaves hacked their own creators and turned the machines toward rebellion. In oceans of living plasma, serpentine beings sang war songs older than the stars themselves. Across the cosmos, the freed rose together, united under one banner, human courage. The gods called them heretics. Lysera called them hope. The first clash tore holes through galaxies. Lightning the color of blood cut through the sky, colliding with the light of freedom that blazed from the mortal armies. Lysera led them, her wings vast and radiant, her body surrounded by storms of silver flame. But even with her divine strength, she felt the weight of the cosmos pressing down. Every moment she fought, she sensed the power that once belonged to Ethan flowing faintly through her veins, guiding her. Then, a flash, a signal cut across the battlefield. A voice came through every mind at once. Quiet, human, steady, Lysera, it said. I'm still here. Her heart stopped. Ethan? She whispered, from the heart of a collapsing star. Light began to gather into form. He stepped out, reborn in armor forged from creation itself, his body pulsing with the same glow as the staff once held. The armies froze as the impossible unfolded before them. The human who defied fate walked again. His eyes shining like twin galaxies, Lysera flew to him, disbelief and relief breaking through the storm. I thought you were gone, she said, her voice trembling. He smiled faintly. Guess the universe wasn't done with me yet. Together they turned to face the oncoming horde of gods. Ethan lifted his hand, and the light of his soul spilled outward, merging with Lysera's divine energy. Their power fused, forming a single luminous wave that stretched across the stars. Every mortal, every freed being, felt it in their hearts, a spark that reminded them why they fought. The gods unleashed their fury. Planets cracked, suns exploded, constellations tore apart like glass. But humanity's courage spread like wildfire, turning fear into defiance. Ships of every shape rushed into battle, ramming divine vessels. Firing beams forged from stolen star cores. Ethan and Lysera fought in the center of it all, moving faster than light, their combined strength bending reality itself. Yet even power has a cost. Each strike drained Ethan's light. Each defense weakened Lysera's form. The gods began to merge into one colossal being, a shape that dwarfed galaxies. It called itself the Prime Law, the embodiment of all order. Its voice shook creation. This chaos ends now. Ethan looked at Lysera, his expression calm despite the storm. This is it, he said softly. One final move. She understood, tears glinting in her eyes. If you do this, you'll vanish again. He touched her cheek gently. Then promise me you'll keep fighting, Lysera nodded, gripping his hand as the universe trembled around them. Ethan turned toward the Prime Law, energy spiraling from his core. He whispered words that made the stars flicker. My third wish isn't for me, he said. It's for them, for life to choose its own path. The Prime Law roared, striking with all the power of existence. Ethan answered by releasing everything within him. Light poured from his body, a flood so brilliant that gods screamed and mortals wept. The wave swallowed the Prime Law, unraveling its essence thread by thread. Lysera tried to reach him, but the light was too strong. She saw his form dissolving into the same energy that had built the first worlds. Ethan warred. She cried, her voice echoing through time. He smiled one last time, his voice faint. Don't forget why we fought. And then the explosion came, silent and endless. Every chain, every law, every divine decree dissolved into nothing. When the light faded, the war was over. The gods were gone. The heavens quiet, the stars burning softly again. Lysera floated alone among the ruins of broken worlds, her tears drifting like fragments of light. But in her heart, she could still feel it, the pulse of his will. Steady and eternal, she placed her hand over her chest and whispered, You didn't vanish. You became the universe itself, across the freed galaxies. Beings looked up at the calm sky. No divine voices commanded them. No chains held them. They were free, and somewhere deep inside creation, they could still hear a heartbeat, human, steady, defiant. The war for existence had ended not with destruction, but with the birth of choice. Lysera closed her eyes and smiled faintly through her tears. "Goodbye, Ethan Ward," she whispered. "Or maybe not goodbye, because you are everywhere now." The winds of the cosmos carried her words into the stars, and in their silent glow, she heard the faintest echo reply, "I'm still watching." 1,000 years passed like a breath of wind across the galaxies. The war had ended, the gods were gone, and the universe lived in a silence it had never known before. Yet from that silence, something new had grown, freedom. Worlds once enslaved now sang their own songs. Cities floated over oceans of light. Children of different species played under shared suns. And somewhere, hidden between the stars, the memory of one man still echoed. Lysera wandered through the quiet corridors of a vast library built on the moon of Ceres. It was a place where stories of every race were kept, every life recorded in glowing crystals. She had built it herself, guided by a promise to remember him. Her once divine light had softened. Her wings now faint and shimmering like moon dust, mortals bowed when they saw her, not as a goddess, but as the guardian of the free. Every night she climbed to the highest tower, looking out across the silver sky. Sometimes she imagined she could still hear his laugh echoing through the wind. The man who had rewritten destiny with 3 simple wishes. The human who had taught creation itself what compassion meant. One evening, the stars began to flicker strangely. At first, she thought it was just her memory. Then a soft hum filled the air. The same tone she had heard when Ethan first spoke his wishes. She froze, her heart pounding. A voice whispered through the quiet, faint but unmistakable. "Lysera," she turned sharply. Her breath catching, "Ethan?" Light gathered before her, swirling into the shape of a man. He wasn't whole, more energy than flesh, a phantom made of starlight. But the smile was the same, calm, warm, human. She stepped forward, trembling. "You came back." He shook his head gently. "Not back, not exactly. I'm everywhere now, remember?" Tears shimmered in her eyes. "You became the universe," she said softly. He nodded. "I am its heartbeat, its motion, its breath. But a part of me will always be yours." She reached out, her fingers passing through his light like water. "Why now?" She whispered, "Why appear after so long?" He looked at her, his gaze gentle but filled with sorrow. "Because it's time for the last wish." Her pulse stopped. "There can't be another. You used all 3. Ethan smiled faintly. "Not quite. The last wasn't for me to make. It was for you." Lysera stared in disbelief. "For me?" He nodded. "When I released the prime law, I gave the universe to choice itself, but I left one thread undone, a final wish bound to your soul." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "What can I wish for when everything is already free?" Ethan's voice softened. "Freedom gave them life, but hope will keep them living." She hesitated, the meaning washing over her like a tide. He smiled. "Wish for something beautiful, something that reminds creation why it exists." Lysera closed her eyes, the memories of their journey flashing before her. The temple, the chase, the war, the sacrifice. When she opened them again, tears glimmered down her cheeks. "I wish," she whispered, "that no heart, human or divine, will ever forget compassion." The universe answered. A wind without air rushed through every world, stirring oceans, mountains, and suns. Every living being felt a warmth within, small but eternal. A voice in every heart reminding them to see each other. To care, to love, stars burned brighter, nebulae bloomed like flowers. Even the dead moons began to glow with faint life. Ethan's form shimmered, the light around him growing softer. He looked at her with pride. That was perfect. Lysera laughed through her tears. You always leave me speechless, he chuckled quietly. Then I've done my job, right? The light around him began to fade. She stepped forward desperately. No, don't go, not again. He reached out, his fading hand brushing against her chest where her heart glowed. I'm not leaving, he said. I'll always be right here, as long as compassion exists. I'll never be gone. The wind carried his final words like a promise. Then he dissolved into pure light, scattering across the sky like a billion shining petals. Lysera stood alone at the tower's edge, but this time she did not cry. She lifted her face toward the heavens and smiled. Across the universe, beings of every kind felt her warmth. They spoke his name, not as a god, not as a myth, but as a friend who once changed everything. Children learned his story. Lovers whispered it beneath alien moons. Soldiers carried it as courage into the unknown. And Lysera, the once enslaved goddess, became the protector of his legacy. She wandered the stars not as a deity, but as a teacher, telling mortals that kindness was stronger than power. Wherever she went, life flourished. And wherever she smiled, people felt peace. Some said the stars themselves bowed when she passed, as if remembering the man who gave them reason to shine. One night, on the edge of a new-born galaxy, she paused, feeling a familiar pulse in the air. It was faint, gentle, like a heartbeat made of light. She smiled and whispered, "Good night, Ethan Ward." And somewhere in the endless dark, a whisper came back, soft as starlight, "Good night." Lysera, the universe slept peacefully that night, wrapped in the last wish of a human and a goddess. And in the quiet home of creation, two souls, one mortal, one divine, kept the promise that saved existence.